How's that better? Okay, we actually are working. Okay. The city attorney will recite the title and lead us in the closed session.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council will meet in closed session for conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6 with the designated representatives and employee organizations as listed on the agenda.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn to the closed session.
Okay.
Please vote by raising of hands, or how do you want to do that? Raising hands.
Okay. Aye.
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 Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we will be back in a few minutes to continue the meeting.
Yeah, and it's only because if they
Oh, I am that special. Can we just give this to our friend? Yeah, okay. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the El Cajon City Council meeting. Welcome to our new digs temporarily. How long are we here for, Graham? How many meetings?
We're hoping only 3, but it could be as many as 4, depending on the work at the council chambers.
Okay. Well, the meeting is called to order. I'd like to ask our city clerk to please call the roll.
All council members are present.
Great. Would you all stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance and then remain standing for a brief moment of silence afterwards? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much.
Mr. Mayor, may I report out of closed session for the
Oh,
special
yes,
meeting?
thank you. We before this meeting, we just had a special meeting. We had a closed session, and our city attorney will report on closed session now.
Thank you, Mayor. The council met in closed session on the one item as listed on the special meeting agenda. Direction was given, no reportable action was taken.
Thank you, Jennifer. The city clerk posted orders of adjournment of the April 28th, 2026 meeting and the agenda of the May 12th, 2026 meeting in accordance to state law and city council, housing authority, and successor agency to the redevelopment agency policy. We have a proclamation for National Public Works Week, and I'll ask our Director of Public Works to come up and accept the proclamation, which I will read. While David's coming up, I'm going to go ahead and read this. Whereas public works professionals focus on infrastructure, facilities, and services that are vital to the importance of the sustainable and resilient communities and to public health, high quality of life, and well-being of the people of the city of El Cajon. And whereas these infrastructure facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals who are managers and employees at all levels of government, who are responsible for maintaining, improving, and protecting transportation, infrastructure, city vehicles, solid waste systems, streets, public buildings, and other structures, and facilities essentials for our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens, civic leaders, and children in the city of El Cajon to gain knowledge of and maintain an ongoing interest and understanding of the importance of public works and public works programs in their respective communities. And whereas the year 2026 marks the 66th annual National Public Works Week sponsored by the American Public Works Association. Now, therefore, I, Bill Wells, Mayor of the City of El Cajon, together with the City Council, do hereby designate the week of May 17th through 23rd of 2026 as National Public Works Week. And we urge all citizens to join with representatives of the American Public Works Association and government agencies in activities, events, and ceremonies designed to pay tribute to our public works professionals and recognize the substantial contributions they make to protecting our health and safety and advancing the quality of life for all. Signed this 12th day of May, 2026. Congratulations.
Okay, good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize our public works folks. I was going to have them come to the front of the room, but this is a small room, so I think I'm just going to have them stand. If you could take a stand if you work for public works. Tonight's proclamation gives us an opportunity to pause and acknowledge the important everyday contributions of our employees who serve our community. I'd like to also recognize the city's engineering team. A couple folks are here today who also share our mission to build, maintain, and improve the city's infrastructure. Next week is National Public Works Week, as you noted. The theme this year is Rooted in Service, Powered by Community. That theme reflects the essential work of our team that they perform every day behind the scenes to keep our city safe, functional, and well-maintained. Whether maintaining streets, sewer systems, storm drains, public facilities, or fleet facilities, public works employees play a vital role in protecting public health and safety while enhancing the quality of life throughout our community. Public Works is often the first to arrive and the last to leave when their disaster strikes. Our crews often work early mornings, late nights, during storms, and in emergency situations, demonstrating not just their professionalism, but their dedication and pride to this community. On behalf of Public Works, I would like to thank our employees for the hard work, commitment, and continued service to the city.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Council, anybody want to say anything? Yeah.
I'm just always still in awe of the MacGyver-like solutions you all come up with for things, because you never know what you're going to get when you come to work each day. There's always something new. So thank you for your creativity, your skill, and your experience in choosing El Cajon. We appreciate you.
I want to thank you all for what you do, because you clean up, you make sure that our streets are good, our sidewalks are good, getting the signs up. I see you out working on projects all the time, and I know you're hard workers. I don't really see anybody just standing around. You're out there doing your job, and I appreciate that, because we're not doing the work. You guys are doing the work, and we appreciate that. And I don't think a lot of people understand what it means to be a blue-collar worker, and what it takes to get out there every day, get dirty, and come home and relax and know that we appreciate you. And that's what I want to impress on you, is that we really do appreciate. I know that the citizens appreciate it as well, because I have noticed a lot on social media that they're noticing that the city is looking really good. It's starting, streets are cleaner, and those that work on the quality of life team, thank you again. That's a tough job. And we know and acknowledge that that isn't what you got hired for, but appreciate the fact that your dedication to the city is that you go out there and you do the work. So thank you very much.
Yes. I just want to acknowledge the fact that when a lot of you signed up for this work, you didn't realize some of the things we're going to be asking you to do. The world changed a bit, and Public Works had to change along with it. And I just want to acknowledge that I know that's hard, and thank you for doing it. And the citizens, thank you. Okay, moving on. Oh, and by the way, you're happy, welcome to stay for the entire exciting city council meeting, but you will not break my heart if you get up and go and take care of business.
Yeah, if I could, let's pause, let our folks leave. That way we can open up some seats for other folks.
All right, thank you. Do this. Okay. Steve. And Kalasha. Yeah, sure. Okay, then. We're going to go on. Agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
No, sir.
How about from the council members? No, I see none. We're now at consent items. Consent items are routine matters enacted by one motion according to the recommendation listed below, with the concurrence of the city council. A council member or person in attendance may request discussion of a consent item at this time. Council members, do you wish to pull any of the consent items? How about staff?
No.
I make a motion that, let me ask Angela if we have any speaker cards for the consent items. Then I would like to make a motion then to approve the consent items.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, raise your hands and say aye. Aye. Okay then. Brings us to public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time that the item is heard. Please note that state law prohibits discussion or action by the city council on items not on the agenda that you bring up during public comment. Therefore, this is not a time that the city council will be answering questions about issues you raise. However, we are taking notes of the matters that you bring up to our attention, and we'll refer them to the city manager for follow-up as needed. An item, of course, may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any speaker cards for public comment?
Yes, sir. We have 4 speakers. And when I call our speakers, we're going to be using our high-tech phone for a 3-minute timer. If they could
Okay.
please be mindful of that. And the first speaker is Jerry.
Hello, sir. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. A couple items that I have. I reached out to my council member, Mr. Kendrick, in regards to a property that's behind my house that's been vacant and abandoned since September of 2023. My mother and father passed away in 23 and 24, so the house is vacant. It has fallen into disrepair. The weeds are like 4 to 5 feet tall. Last year, we had all the rain last year. This year, they're 3 to 4 feet. With fire season coming into play, they're brown. I've gotten hold of the Heartland Fire personnel, and they're going to cite the trustee, who happens to be my sister, that's responsible for the property. In that time frame from September 23 to present date, she's been on site. She's been on site 1 day. And we're coming up on 3 years. She's been at the property 1 day. I've gotten hold of vector control. There are rats infesting the property. They set some traps out. I'm going to make sure that she's made aware of that through her legal counsel. And it's just in disrepair. I've reached out to code enforcement, haven't heard back. Called them about 3 weeks ago. I text my council member May 5th because we had a communication on another topic, and I hadn't heard back from you, so I figured I'd show up and discuss this. So I'm looking for assistance from code enforcement. I've got the county health now involved, and the fire officials hopefully will cite the individual, my sister, and rectify the problem until the house is distributed, which I'm the only person on the trust that will receive the property. Second matter, I've talked to Mr. Kendrick in regards to ADU that was built next to my property. Not a problem. If they have the adequate clearances and they meet all the requirements, go for it, because I'm going to be doing the same and building an ADU. The concern I have is that when the individuals next door pulled the permit, I believe they informed the city that they had adequate width for their driveway. They don't, because I've had it surveyed and we're in legal proceedings with them for the past 2 years that they've encroached on my property. And it's excess of 8 to 10 inches down to a minimum of 2 to 4 inches. We've had it surveyed multiple times. We're now being deposed, and we're fact-finding in that legal matter. But it appears that everything that they've done, or the majority of what they've done, they've trespassed and encroached on my property with their construction. With the fire officials, we've had a discussion in regards to the driveway width, which when I was with the fire department for 31 years, was a 16-foot wide driveway with a 13.6 high vertical clearance, so that the engines could come in and out if the house were to catch on fire. Or is it just too loud? Or
We're just trying to figure out our new equipment here.
okay,
By the next council meeting, we'll have it all figured out.
is this okay here? Try. Cool. Is my timer up?
That's okay. Just keep going.
Okay, so I've been in contact with I've had discussions with city attorney, Noah, I forget his last name, Avery, several fire officials, and my attorney and my wife were there present, and we had a question in regards to the driveway width, because they've encroached. In addition, there's the unprotected gas meter that's in their driveway that's also a requirement by the building official to put bollards in front of it to protect it so it doesn't get hit when cars are coming in and out. But my concern there is just to make the city council aware that there is litigation being done because of the property line not being totally called out in the plans process, and the fact that the person that's an owner builder, from what I understand, and I'm seeking to get that information, hired unlicensed contractors the concrete guy, the person that removed the boundary trees, and if you know anything about boundary tree law, it's substantial. He took out 2 trees, 2 companies took out a juniper, which is in excess of 60 years old, which I can't find a replacement for that. So as I proceed, I'm trying to get additional information from the city in regards to easements and all that, but I'm running into a little bit of problem with the program that the building department pushed me off to. It's called PACO, I guess it is. I can't find the form to request documents that show that the neighbor was an owner builder and thus be able to notify the proper authorities from the state insurance on down, because they're supposed to have insurance in place if they hire unlicensed contractors to do the work. And it's stipulated in your requirements for owner builder that they signed or hopefully sign, and I'm looking to get that as well so I can bring that into my legal matter against them for trespassing.
Let me check something. Graham, is there somebody who can help him find that form? Yeah, Graham will help you find the form.
Cool. I think my time's up.
Yeah, I think so too. Let me see if there's any questions amongst the city council. Thanks for coming in. Sorry you're having problems.
That's all right. It's a civil matter now, right?
Just like, where were you a firefighter?
With CAL FIRE, 31 years. I worked down here, then I transferred up to Monterey and ended up being, for a portion of my career up there, I was the fire marshal for Pebble Beach, but I retired as a battalion chief. So
Well, thanks for what you did.
it was a fun time.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Sue Mayberry.
Hello, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, city employees. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. My name is Sue Mayberry. I'm a volunteer with Trauma Intervention Program of San Diego. We used to partner with the city of El Cajon. That was right before I joined TIP as a volunteer. We would really like to partner with you all again. We provide emergency, emotional, and practical support to people who have been traumatized. We're called out by the first responders, fire, law enforcement. People die. Parents go out and find out their 17-year-old hung himself overnight, or their daughter overdosed, or their 84-year-old wandered away from home because he had Alzheimer's. We're trained volunteers to be that emotional support for them. Last year, we responded to over 1,043 calls throughout the county. We helped 3,413 people who were traumatized to take the next step. We help them identify what it is. We're the person who's there with them on the worst day of their life. I have some flyers about TIP and business cards. If I may leave them with you. I would like to talk with someone about maybe next steps. We're with the unincorporated areas of El Cajon. We're with Santee, Lakeside, La Mesa, Lemon Grove. We'd like to give the people in El Cajon and your first responders some support in some really terrible times as well, if we may. Thank you so much for what you do for this city, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks for helping people.
I'm sorry, sir.
Thanks for helping people. Thank you for helping people.
Michael Herman.
Oh, sir, welcome.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Herman. I currently serve as president of the San Diego chapter of the Sons of the American Revolution. We are a fraternal organization that is hereditary. All of our members have had someone who fought in the American Revolution. This year, as you probably are aware, is the 250th anniversary of our country. And one of the things that we are working with communities with is planting liberty trees. And we would like to see if you would enjoy to have a liberty tree planted here in your city. We are a 501c3 charity. We try to do this as inexpensively as possible. We hope that would not intrude upon your budget either. The Liberty Tree, if you don't know, was the gathering place in Boston and many cities on the East Coast for the discussions of the tyranny of the king. And it's an opportunity to make a space for people to gather and talk about the issues of the day. Thankfully, we no longer have a king to worry about. The tree would hopefully be a long living tree that would make it to the 300th anniversary. It could be any variety of species you want. What they planted on the East Coast was an elm. I don't know if elms grow very well here. I am not an agriculturist by any means. But we could work together on doing that. We'd probably put a plaque with the mayor and the city council's names on it with planting of the tree. So if you're interested, please get in contact with us and we'd be happy to work with you.
Can you leave your information? Our city staff will
Sure.
call you. Thank you. It sounds like a great program.
Well, I hope it all works out. I guess it's good that we're here on Public Works Day. I just found another project for them.
It's a good thing they left.
We have 3 more speakers. The next one is Ashcon Jones.
Well, welcome.
Hi, welcome, Mayor, council members. Unfortunately, I'm here today on behalf of Assembly Member Dr. Lachey Sharp Collins and the rest of the 79th Assembly District in opposition to the city's lawsuit to repeal SB 54. While we're always looking to work with the city on issues that improve the conditions for working class residents, we are opposed to the lawsuit because it does nothing but really create danger for our constituents. All of the legal arguments laid out, including challenging SB 54 and the outrageous accusation that somehow not cooperating with federal agents constitutes soliciting a criminal act, that's been debunked by the Ninth Circuit already. Some of the most concerning aspects of the lawsuit are the city suing to, quote, inquire into an individual's immigration status. This could simply be based on how they speak or the color of their skin. Quote, detaining individuals due to federal immigration hold requests. These are very often based on one's country of origin. And finally, transferring individuals to quote, transferring individuals to immigration authorities absent a judicial warrant, which constitutes a violation of one's due process almost, at least in spirit. This is a lawsuit that, if successful, would allow the city to enter schools, detain individuals simply based on the suspicion of being an illegal alien with little to no evidence. I happen to remember the mayor and city council here having heroic praise for former President Ronald Reagan, to the point now where we have the Ronald Reagan Community Center here in El Cajon. The last president to actually grant amnesty to our immigrant brothers and sisters out here was indeed President Reagan. I assume the city would be suing him under the same circumstances if he instituted his policy of amnesty. The only reason the city is pursuing this lawsuit is because they're being sued for violating the state law by sharing data with over 24 states. And because this distracts from things like increasing homelessness in the city by 20%, I believe, in El Cajon in 2025, a crime rate that remains on par with many other higher crime areas in East County. And above all, the highest poverty rate of any city in all of San Diego County. And while the council is fighting the state on this lawsuit, the assembly member has been getting bills signed into law, like the first bill that ever restricts towing fees, improvements in inspection to our school, establishing the Parkinson's Disease Research Fund. These are things that actually address people's affordability concerns, health concerns, and this lawsuit will do nothing to address that or the city's current 20% poverty rate.
Next speaker is Sasha, and I apologize, but I cannot make out the last name.
Afternoon, Mayor.
Welcome.
Council. I'm a first-time homeowner, just purchased in El Cajon. Unfortunately, I'm facing a collapsed lateral sewer line that I just recently found out was my fiscal responsibility. Unfortunately, it's about 40 feet onto the city street. I'm looking at a potential $80,000 to $90,000 repair, which is out of my pocket.
Wow.
I'm curious. This is a clarification on how that's the case. I've done quite a bit of work here, understanding our sewer main line issues. Unfortunately, my development was 1951 is when we were built. I know a lot of ABS installation occurred about 75. However, the city of El Cajon, unlike the county of San Diego in 2009, opted to not take over financial responsibility for the lateral line on the easement as well as the city right of way. We purchased in December. That cost out of pocket is surmountable. Potentially, right? Like we could lose our homes here in El Cajon. The entire development is facing potentially the same issue. And I'm just looking for some sort of assistance, guidance on what can be done in this situation. Unfortunately, we have to get a Class A plumber to do the work. The city is required to do the tap on the main sewer line. My hands are tied, and my pocketbook is unfortunately drained here.
Well, I can completely understand that. I think it would devastate any of us if that were to happen. Graham, any thoughts on this? This is the first I've heard of this.
This is actually a common issue. We actually get calls frequently about laterals that have collapsed. El Cajon, like many cities, requires the property owner to be responsible for the lateral. It's on their property. It's serving only them. So it's a typical policy that most cities have in place. The cost would be astronomical if we were to take on that liability for all residents. I know when I was in Lemon Grove, we actually explored an option of bringing it in-house, and we estimated a cost of about $10 million a year in lateral costs. So if you were to take that cost and put it out towards El Cajon's numbers, it's about $42 million that we would have to raise rates to have that fund available for lateral collapses. So that is the concern. It is a policy issue. I know some cities do offer, and even private homeowners are allowed to. I actually owned part of my insurance. My home insurance was to cover my lateral. So there are insurance programs that will cover laterals. In this case, I don't know if that's the situation, but we currently, by law, that would be a gift of public funds if we were to take over this lateral repair. So that's the challenge.
Yeah. Are there any grant programs, any way a regular homeowner can survive something like this?
I'm not aware of any.
Okay, well, sir, all I can tell you is this is the first time I've heard about this. I'm going to look into this. Graham, I'd like to get a report on the severity of the problem that other people are facing and what our options are, because it does seem like a pretty onerous thing for somebody to have to come up with. Any thoughts from the council?
We also have some grants and assistance for the low-income housing fund. I think you have to qualify based on your income or based whether you're a senior or things. So you might see if any of those apply in the situation. Thank you.
Under $56,000 a year is your income to qualify for those assistance programs. Unfortunately, I wouldn't own a home if that was the case.
Sure.
The insurance that Graham was referring to only covers 10 feet out of the foundation of your home. So even within your property line, that's the cap, and it's a $10,000 cap. Again, it's the city right away that I'm now fiscally responsible to have ripped up and permitted, etc. I have no problem taking financial obligation for my sewer line, but my sewer line is attached to the city street. Therefore, liability becomes questionable, in my opinion.
Okay, well, listen, thank you. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to push you off. I don't know quite how to answer this at this point, but you've brought it to my attention, to our attention. We're going to look into this. If you'd like to leave your name and number, I'd be glad to give you a call and see
Absolutely.
I think we're willing to do whatever we can within limits and boundaries, but obviously there are laws and there are realistic constraints that we have to deal with. So let me look into it and I'll give you a call.
I appreciate it. Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
Two more speakers, sir. Next one is Brenda.
Hey, Brenda.
Hi. I'm going to try not to echo because it's really echoing bad back there. We can't really hear.
I know. I'm sorry. The audio is not as good as it is at the council table. We'll be back there soon.
Okay. um, I want to know if you know what a pace car is. It's a car that's used on racetracks to pace the race cars before they take off racing. Well, I've been in and out of El Cajon, to run away like a teenager. I take different routes, usually avocado, and I've been thinking about the city's speed camera program, which I think is a great idea, except for the pace cars. Yeah, they get in front of a group of cars at an intersection waiting for the Christmas trees, signal lights to go green. And and then the wannabe pace car takes off speeding, and most people are influenced by drivers around them, but I'm not. So I'm wondering if you can keep an eye out for the same speeding cars in the same areas, trying to get other drivers in trouble, speeding, or are they part of the pilot program? And so I have time for this. And then I was wondering if any of you showed up at the Republican Women's Meeting at the Olaf Museum on Saturday. It was great. I've never been to a campaign rally like that before. It was fun, especially one of the candidates dropped the F-bomb, accidentally, of course. And even if it wasn't on accident, so what? I have great comfort in knowing that a person representing a community is going to be real and not be fakely woke like what's happening out there right now in the county. Salute you. I salute you, madam. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
The last speaker is Captain Jeff Lashmet.
Hello, welcome.
Hi. So it's been a while, or should I say it's been a minute since I've addressed the council. My name is Captain Jeff Flashman, El Cajon Fire Department. Worked for the city for 37 years, grew up in this community. I'm here for several reasons. The first is to give council and the city an update on my cancer journey, which is work related to my 37 years of service to the city and the citizens. I had surgery and 2 rounds of radiation. At this point, the cancer is not stable. The doctor says metastasis, which is not a good thing. So I just like the council to know that, and that leads me into why I'm here. The second part is file a grievance and a complaint against the Human Resource Department and the city manager. I would like to address the Personnel Committee. Yeah. Okay. So I've asked to.
We can hear you. Go ahead.
So I've asked HR to Personnel Commission. I've seen Mayor Wells before, and I regret that I didn't ask him to assist on talk to the Personnel Commission, but this is where my journey is at, and this is where I'd like it to end. The grievance I'll read to you. My leaving this letter of grievance against the city of Human Resource Department and the city manager. They have violated city policy in creating a hostile, retaliatory environment. They've been unprofessional, hostile, I believe retaliatory in dealing with my request for disability retirement. I would like to testify in front of the Personnel Commission and have them investigate and make recommendations back to the City Council about how my case was handled. However, the HR department controls access to the Personnel Commission and does not want to be investigated. If I'm denied access to the Personnel Commission, I'm happy to have this discussion in front of the full council and the public, or I'm happy to discuss it with the media. I would like this, at this point, to be resolved and these matters looked into. I know the council is all new since my retirement. They're not familiar with my journey, but it's been interesting. But I must say, with all the things I've been exposed to in my career with the fire department, and been held accountable for, I am mystified of how I've been treated by the staff. So that's where I'm at. I would like a decision. If you could decide now, make that decision, or you can call me before the next council meeting. But I want to see the Personnel Commission. They need to hear this evidence. I have documentation, and I've got proof of what they've done. They basically denied and agreed with the state to deny my disability requirement because it was late, not because it was relevant, because it was late. And there was policies to handle that. And I asked for help from the city. They never helped me. The then sitting city attorney attended my appeal and said nothing in my defense. And I will read one quote from the state law that, again, the Personnel Commission denied. It said, oh, this was their answer when asked one word. And I will also say that they never talked to me. The HR, I called them. I was sent a questionnaire. This HR department sent a questionnaire. I asked to meet with them in response to having a united front so that this could proceed smoothly and I could transfer to a disability retirement based on my work-related cancer. Nobody's denying my cancer is work-related. They denied it. Procedure. So, fifth question on this, and I will present this to the Personnel Commission. Would the City of El Cajon object if CalPERS accepts this member's untimely application? Yes. One word, that's all they said. Now, I'll read you the state law when it comes to...
Captain, I apologize. I do understand how serious this is, but this is probably not the time or place to litigate this.
No, I will explain this. Well, I'll ask, am I going to get a chance to speak to the Personnel Commission?
I don't know.
Based on-
I have no idea what the procedures are for something like that.
I filed a grievance. I have it right here.
Mr. Mayor, this is the inappropriate time to have this conversation,
No.
but I think it's important to have it. The Personnel Commission has purview over specific things. There's some things they don't have purview over. This is one of the things they have no purview over. They do not look at grievances. They don't look at salary schedules. If the council wanted to pursue this, the way you do it is the city council would do a performance evaluation on the city manager to look into that. That would be part of the process. We've provided you information about this in the past, and we'll reiterate that to the city council.
So I understand what you're saying is if we're unhappy with you, we have to look into our relationship with you, but
That's correct.
what is the appropriate avenue for Captain Lockman to pursue his grievance? Is it a legal issue or is it how is this handled?
I can't give him legal advice. I know that he's had hearings with CalPERS. CalPERS has denied his hearing, has denied his request. Completely out of our control. We have no control over CalPERS. Again, we can provide you some background information. I think we've provided that in the past. We can do that again. But this is probably the inappropriate time to have that conversation.
Okay. Their decision from CalPERS was based on the input from the city and the staff. Okay, that's what needs to be looked into.
Again, this is turning into a trial at this point. I completely, first off, I want to say, Captain, thank you for your service. I am so sorry that you're dealing with cancer. I really am. This is probably not the place to talk about this. However, I will meet with our attorney. I will meet with our city manager afterwards, and I'll see what options we have. And I appreciate your comment.
No, this is the statement from the state. This is how it works. This is what they don't know.
Captain.
On receipt of application with respect to local safety member other than a school safety member, the board shall request the governing body of the contracting agency, which is El Cajon, employing the member to make the determination. So they determined not to give me my disability retirement. So, and if I can't get a decision from the city council, because you have the ultimate authority, I don't care what the city manager says.
Well, we have a system.
I want to speak. That's their business. The Personnel Commission reviews complaints. I had a grievance when I retired that was not settled. So I know the Personnel Commission will hear the grievance. That's their job.
Captain, I will look into it afterwards, but we can't do this here. But I thank you for coming.
Okay. Well, just know that if the response is 37 years, I can't get 10 minutes in front of the Personnel Commission, I'm happy to speak to the public in regards to how the city handled. And I will tell you, Mr. Mitchell,
Captain.
appreciate you calling the cops on me last time I was at City Hall. That's what this is gone down. Last time I was at City Hall, he called the police on me and had me escorted out because I said I wanted to.
Well, Captain, let's not do that again. Let's. I appreciate. Is that what you want, Captain? I don't want that.
Well, I want to see the personnel.
Well, that's not going to happen today. We're not going to. It's on the agenda. We legally can't even make a decision about something like that. So thank you for bringing it up. I very much appreciate it.
Also remind you the pledge you made to flag justice. That's all.
Thank you, Captain.
Hey, touch me again, I'll charge assault. No, I'm going to. I've got paperwork to get to the city clerk. No. I know you gentlemen. I hope you respect the city. Yeah. Well, this is who. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Angela. There are no written communications on today's agenda. We have two public hearings on today's agenda. Item 9 is to confirm delinquent refuse recycling collection charges, and our staff will tell us about this.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. My name is Aaron Jones. I'm the Deputy Director of Public Works. Before I get started, I would like to introduce EDCO's executive team who are here today to help me answer any questions if there are any. Over here we have Anthony Cajon. He's the environmental coordinator for EDCO. Also behind me, I believe I have, right there, there's General Manager Carl Scherbaum, and we also have Steve South, the EDCO CEO, right here. So the purpose of today's hearing is to receive public testimony, confirm and authorize the placement of liens to be placed on properties where the property owners have neglected to pay their refuse and recycling bills. So in January of 2021, the city established a franchise agreement with EDCO to provide residential and commercial refuse, recycling, and organics services in the city. As part of the franchise agreement, EDCO may directly bill each customer for the cost of service. So exemptions for this may be granted if the customer provides documentation that their property is vacant, that they self-haul their waste and recycling, or if they have a current EDCO commercial account and haul their waste there. In instances where customers do not pay the fees, the city assists EDCO by recording a lien on the properties for delinquent amounts. The collected outstanding balances are then remitted to EDCO. So we're in the 5th year of using property lien process with EDCO. This table here shows the historic averages of delinquent accounts dating back to 2017. So the green areas show the past 5 years of liens with EDCO, and the blue areas show the annual average delinquent accounts when the city was with Waste Management. As of January 2026, there were a total of 904 delinquent accounts, but as you can see here, as of May 4th, the number of delinquent accounts had been reduced to 146. So we did just receive an update this morning as well, and the number has been further reduced to 115 delinquent accounts currently. So EDCO has placed a great deal of effort to bring accounts back to good standing through a variety of outreach methods. These methods include traditional mailings, sending multiple invoices, emails, placing notices on carts, automated calls, and personal calls from service representatives. So as you can see, this outreach has paid off in reducing the number of delinquent accounts by nearly 84% since the beginning of the year. So that concludes my presentation. At this time, staff recommends conducting the public hearing, adopting resolution confirming the, as of today, the 115 accounts with a value of approximately $39,000 with fees as delinquent, and authorizing the city clerk to record the amount owed for each account as a lien. I'm available to answer any questions. If
Thanks
you
for
have
your
any.
report. Let me ask if the city council has any questions for you. Michelle?
Thank you for your report. I just want to confirm, is this like the sewer bill where it just goes onto the property tax bill if they don't pay it?
So I believe these end up on, as liens, end up on the property taxes, and they're paid through that method.
Okay, so I mean, from what I understand, some people just pay their bill, when they pay their property tax. Is that how this works too?
Yes.
Am I misunderstanding something?
Well, if they don't, if people do not pay their bills, the lien gets put against their property, and then it's paid through the taxes.
Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Okay. The public hearing is now open. Angela, do we have any speaker cards on this item?
No speaker card, sir.
I'd like to make a motion then to close the public hearing. Please vote by raising your hand. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion. All right, there's a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed?
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Thanks for coming. Mr. South, good to see you. The last public hearing on today's agenda, item 10, is to consider an amendment to the schedule of miscellaneous fees. I'd like to ask our staff to tell us about this.
Thanks, Mayor. This item is a public hearing to consider increases to certain fees charged by city departments for providing services to the public. These are considered user fees, where someone is requesting a service and the city charges a fee for that service. None of the proposed fee increases exceed the cost of providing the services. City staff is currently reviewing other user fees, and if there are further proposed updates, then those will be brought back to the council at a future public hearing. If you have any questions, the general changes in fees recommended are from the city clerk's office, development services, building, safety, planning and engineering services, finance, fire, and parks and recreation. And if you have any specific questions about certain fees that are getting raised, I will defer to the staff from those departments to answer those questions.
Are there any questions for Jennifer? Steve would like to start.
Do fees need to be voted on by the population, including new fees?
No, these types of user fees are not under Prop 218, and under Prop 26, they're considered user fees, and as long as they don't exceed the cost of providing the service, the council's allowed to adopt them after we provide notice and the council hears a public hearing.
Sounds good, thanks.
Are there any other questions? All right. I'd like to open the public hearing and ask Angela if we have any speaker cards.
No speaker card, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to close the public hearing. Please vote. I'm sorry. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed?
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
All right. If there's no more discussion, I'm looking for a motion. All right. Please vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
We have two administrative reports on today's agenda. Item 11 is a report on city reserve funds, and I'd like to ask our staff to introduce this item.
Good afternoon, Honorable Mayor, distinguished members of the City Council. My name is Clay Shane. I am the Finance Director for the City of El Cajon. Subject today is to provide an update and discussion on city reserve funds. Reserves in the City of El Cajon is a very important topic. We do discuss it quite a bit. It does seem like recently it's been discussed far more frequently, and unfortunately, a lot of these conversations have been kind of fragmented. So what we're going to attempt to do today is to try to pull some of the stuff together, refresh the dialogue a little bit, and maybe share some new information. Today's presentation will include a brief discussion of the city's current reserve policy and practices. We'll talk about the various types of reserves in use. We'll also talk about how reserves apply to other city funds, funds other than the city's general fund. And we will also briefly update you on the status of the general fund reserve. Reserve policy starts with City Council Policy B12 fund balance. This policy was put into place in 2011. I want to point out the significance of this date. 2011 was right immediately following the Great Recession. 2008, 2009, 2010, we experienced the Great Recession, and it was tremendously impactful to city operations. Pretty much any city you go to, I would venture to say the vast majority of fund balance policies, reserve policies that you'll find in the state of California were authored about this point in time. It was a very traumatic experience for those in city governance. Most cities were not prepared for the significance of that event, and there was a tremendous effort coming out of the Great Recession to prepare ourselves collectively to be better prepared the next time it comes around. I share these comments because these things do happen from time to time. We've been very fortunate on the one hand that it's been over 15 years that we've had an event of this magnitude, but it will happen again. And I also want to point out that because it has been so long with the general uptick in a trend, that a lot of our employees aren't aware of how this feels and what it's like and what things go through when we face the challenges that we did during the Great Recession. Anyways, sorry for the editorial. One of the more significant statements in the policy is a statement of purpose. It states that the city fund balance policy is established to ensure that city maintains adequate fund balance and reserves in the various governmental funds to provide sufficient cash flow for daily needs, secure and maintain investment grade bond ratings, offset significant economic downturns or revenue shortfalls, and provide funds for unforeseen expenditures related to emergencies. Now, we'll get to each one of those in one way or another through this conversation, but I want to point out the investment grade bond rating component of that. This isn't something we talk about. The city of El Cajon typically is not a big player in debt financing. But when those events occur, like the POB a few years ago, one of the things rating agencies look very heavily at is the stability of city revenues and the reserve status. If the city is determined to be strong in both categories, our rating is higher, and it generally lowers our cost of borrowing money. The policy itself only establishes two specific reserve types: the general fund operating reserve and the general fund reserve for future budget imbalance. We'll get into each one of those in a moment. Most of the heavy lifting is actually on the practice side. One of the things we do on a regular basis, and we do this in conjunction with the adoption of the annual budget, is we have a resolution we submit to the city council for approval that designates general fund balances. And this sets the policy in practice of what these reserves are and how they're used. I found the graphic of a traffic light kind of useful in this place because these reserve types do serve different purposes and they should be viewed at with different restrictions and seriousness. The first of which, the general fund operating reserve, is one of the two that is established by B12. And let's assign that the red light. That is the foundational reserve in the general fund. That gives the city enough cash that the treasurer can cut checks to pay the bills. This isn't a budgetary issue. This isn't a authorization issue. This is straightforward having enough cash to cut checks. Maintaining that reserve make sure that through the highs and lows of revenues, receipts, and expenditures, that there is enough money in the bank to pay bills. Therefore, I consider that a foundational reserve and a red light. That is often referred to as the reserve of last resort. The second fund type, this is the one that B12 refers to as for reserve for budgetary imbalance. We designate it using a slightly different title. It serves the same purpose, and that's the designated for economic uncertainty. That is the reserve that, when we talk about reserves, is sort of your typical reserve. That reserve, and that's when sales tax softens, we have something to go to. It's the backstop for operations when times get tough, things like that. It is a reserve that should be used under certain conditions, and we'll talk about that. And let's assign that a yellow light. You can use it under certain circumstances, should use it, but should always be doing so with caution. Just as an additional point on that, our professional body, the Government Finance Officers Association, which is our premier professional body in municipal governance, municipal financial governance, has a best practice that speaks to what is an appropriate reserve level. And I think that specifically addresses this type of reserve. And it caveats its own best practice pretty heavily by saying that every organization is different and has unique needs. But in the absence of that analysis, it recommends that a city maintains 2 months worth of operations. That, if you do the math, is about 17%. We found many, many years ago that 17% was just not an elegant number. We already had a 20% reserve in practice. We try to keep that reserve at 20% just for ease of maintenance, but it solves that need. The third fund type, or excuse me, reserve type, is the general fund designated for unfunded PERS retirement obligations. I think we could have admittedly done a better job on titling that, but coming out of the Great Recession, CalPERS had lost approximately 1/4 of its investment portfolios. So at the same time cities are trying to come out of the Great Recession and recover, CalPERS is trying to backfill their investment losses and charged cities increasingly more and more and more. And it was creating kind of a double whammy of the Great Recession. Recognizing that that was such a problem for us specifically, many years ago, we established a separate reserve specifically to address that issue. That gives us a backstop for when CalPERS gives us a bill that we're not prepared to pay for whatever reason. Sometimes there's a good reason, sometimes we don't love it so much, but the fact of the matter is they give us a bill, we need to pay it. This reserve gives us the ability to deal with those challenges without having to look at budget cuts to do it. And lastly, the general fund carryover reserve. Excuse me, let me go back for just a minute. I would say let's give the general fund designated retirement obligation reserve a yellow light as all. It has a very specific purpose, and should we ever fall into those needs, we absolutely should use it for that purpose. And the last reserve type is the general fund carryover reserve. And truly that represents excess reserves. That is the amount of money that the general fund has available that is available for future appropriation once all the other reserve buckets are full. That is the spillover. That's the catch-all. Come back with balances for each of those in just a second. While we're talking about reserve types conceptually, I wanted to touch on some of the other reserve funds that we discuss in the report. Every fund has fund equity. They use a number of different terms. You may hear me drift between them. Fund equity, fund reserves, net assets, reserves, those are all fundamentally the same thing. Bottom line is that is money that is available for appropriation and future spending. The Wastewater Enterprise Fund is the second biggest fund in the city of El Cajon. From year to year, it varies from a third the size of the general fund to half the size of the general fund. I think we're probably all familiar with what the wastewater enterprise fund is, but this is our enterprise fund that maintains our wastewater and stormwater systems and generates its revenue through user fees. This is a very capital heavy operation, and the majority of the accumulated reserve balance, the 44.3 in that fund, really is earmarked and attributable to future CIP spending. In the report, we discussed that in long term, it would benefit the city of El Cajon to address the wastewater enterprise fund in the fund balance policy as well. The reason is, one, there's an awful lot of money at play, but it's very important to understand the needs that need to be met by that balance. The majority of that 44.3 million will be used or will need to be used to maintain the system itself. But the wastewater enterprise fund has the same working capital requirements as any fund. It needs to have enough cash to pay the bills. Additionally, because its revenue is generated by ratepayers, there is a need to have some rate stabilization component to that reserve. At some point, we should sit down and discuss what are those appropriate levels and incorporate that into the policy. Currently, it's not addressed, but that fund has $44.3 million of reserves in it. The first of our internal service funds we talk about is our self-insurance fund. Unlike wastewater, where we have external parties paying rates, internal service funds are funds that service city entities, other city departments. Self-insurance provides effectively just that, insurance for city operations. The basic principle is that our ratepayers, our city operations, pay a somewhat level contribution amount every year that goes into this fund, and it pays claims against the city as needed. By adopting this kind of model, it smooths out the impact to operations rather than having to curtail operations during a year of high claims. For example, this year is exceptionally high with both workers' comp and external claims against the city. If we directly charged our users, we would be in a position where we would have budgetary impacts and need to reduce services to our community in order to pay the claims cost. This gives us the buffer to do that. A lot of cities incorporate this fund in their fund balance policy also. We currently do not. One of the pieces of information we use to influence what is an appropriate number in that fund is an actuarial report of outstanding liability claims against the city. This actuary examines city history, external party history, and they make a very educated guess about what all the unidentified claims out there in the universe against the city are. Most cities will base their reserves in that fund based on a percentage of those outstanding claims. Depending on the level of confidence, outstanding claims may be currently $5 million. So we have approximately half of that in that fund. My own personal opinion on that is that's probably a little on the light side. And if you do maintain too low of a balance in that fund, you potentially run into the same situation that we just recently did, that we had to take a mid-year action to put more money in the fund. The last two fund types that I'd like to address are internal service funds that only have one customer, and it's the general fund. Both of these fund types act as a sinking fund for the general fund. The first is the fleet replacement fund. This is entirely general fund money that's set aside for the acquisition of replacement vehicles for our fleet. The premise here is you fund a replacement fund on a systematic basis, on a regular basis, and you buy vehicles as needed. That flatlines the expense of vehicle replacement, but it also gives you a piggy bank to raid in those bad years where you can't afford to hit the general fund to buy vehicles. You have that as a resource. Our vehicular fleet on the governmental operations side citywide is somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to $12 million of book value. Vast majority of that is general fund, not all of it. So just for the sake of this conversation, let's say general fund vehicles are approximately $8 million right now. Currently, that fund only has $642,000 in it. It probably couldn't afford to replace 1 year's worth of vehicles if called upon. This has been a fund that we have underfunded in lieu of other activities for many years now, and it's kind of getting to a critical balance where we potentially could get to that point where, just hypothetically, PD, I know you guys are behind me, but theoretically you could be in a position where you're having to choose between police officers and the vehicles they use, because there isn't enough money for both. We haven't set enough money aside to replace the vehicles as needed. The last is the City Capital Improvement Program Fund. This is the CIP fund. This is the resource that the general fund contributes to fund future CIP projects. These typically are our facilities costs, our rec centers, city hall, things like that. And here again, the idea is you're putting money away in advance of needing it. This balance actually moves around a little bit depending on the number of new projects and completed projects. So ask me again tomorrow, that number may change a little bit, but it's been pretty consistently in the $4 to $5 million range for a couple of years right now. That sounds like an awful lot of money, but if you say hypothetically a roof replacement is somewhere between $500,000 and $1 million, and you know you have 3 roofs that need to be replaced, that number goes away really, really quickly. And what that does is diminishes our capacity to respond to the unforeseen needs should they arise. So jumping back to the general fund reserve balances, as of June 30th, 2025, and that was our last completed fiscal year, the general fund had a total of $66.6 million in total reserves. And I think we collectively have done ourselves a disservice by focusing a lot on that number. When we talk about reserves and we think about reserves, we think about having $66 million in the bank, and we do. But it kind of turns a blind eye to the fact that most of that money has been already earmarked for policy decisions. In this case, $53 million has already been set aside from a policy standpoint for that red lighted operating reserve, the yellow lighted pension reserve, the economic uncertainty reserve, the green lighted reserve, the excess reserve, the money that we can easily get into and use without feeling bad about it, started FY26 with approximately $14.2 million, which I think is an entirely different conversation than having $66 million to work with. But even during the course of this fiscal year, we have used that carryover reserve quite heavily. This table shows the actions taken by the City Council during the course of the year to use reserves to fund a variety of activities, most notably Fire Station 7 remodel at $2.5 million, to get to a point where we were comfortable adopting the 26 budget. We used approximately $1.9 million of reserves, and just recently the transfer to the self-insurance fund of $1.6 million. And there was a number of other smaller hits. We had the opportunity to bring the additional 6 firefighters on board for Engine 208. Transferred working capital to the Magnolia Fund to support its operations, a project in the IT Services Fund, additional legal services, as well as additional operating expenditures in Public Works. So we've already used approximately half of that carryover reserve this year, precisely $7.7 million, and that leaves us a little north of 6 still in the carryover reserve. So to start wrapping things up, reserves are really good things, and they should be used. They should be used for a number of things. Green light, the one-time expenditures, and we've done that with the Station 7 remodel. One-time monies for one-time uses, That is a healthier relationships. Emergencies. If it ever comes down to life, safety, and true emergencies, I would hope we would use reserves, and we would use any reserve for that matter. Economic downturns. We expect to have sales tax soften for 2 or 3 years. If the economic uncertainty reserves helps us weather that without cutting services to the city, that's a great use of reserves. And additionally, there's strategic investment. If we have an opportunity to bring more money into the city by spending a little, we absolutely should be doing that. However, the use of reserves is discouraged for ongoing operations. The image I like for that is a bucket with a hole in it. Without the ability to put more money in, you're going to drain it out at whatever rate, but it's going to empty at some point, and that's the end of it, right? These sort of situations are referred to as a structural deficit. And in discussion about government finance, you do hear that term an awful lot, and it's frequently misused. But this is exactly what this term means when it's used precisely, and it's when operating revenues do not support operating expenses. As soon as you have ongoing expenses exceeding the method of paying for them, you've got a problem, and it's a structural deficit. So at this point, I believe Mr. Mitchell has some comments he would like to make as well, and I'm available for any questions when we're done.
Thank you, Mr. Shane. I think one of the concerns that we have always had is not every city is the same, right? So cities that are on fault lines, they probably should have a little bit more in reserves because they have earthquakes. We have a type of a fault line. It's an economic fault line, and it's called sales tax. A lot of our neighboring cities in this county get the majority of their revenue from property tax, which is extremely stable. There's usually not huge swings in up, but there's almost never swings in down. We get a very small percentage relative to other cities from property tax. And we've talked a lot about that. Partly it's because we have so many apartments that don't turn over hands. Mr. Goldman and I talked about that just yesterday. And so we're heavily reliant on sales tax. But even more scary is we're heavily reliant on new car sales tax. And as there's any economic downturn, that's the very first thing to get hit in the economy is the sale of new cars. We have been in a period of about 2-3 years right now, and we're projecting out the next year too, where car sales have been pretty flat. And the council has had to rely on the general fund reserve to balance the budget for the last 2 years. So you could say we are moving into an environment where we're close to having a structural deficit. I don't think we're quite there yet because I think we are still a little bit more susceptible than other cities to the economic downturn. And so it's fair that we're using some of these funds without having to do dramatic cuts to staff. But if we continue at this rate, we will be clearly in a structural deficit. One of the concerns that I think that we have is we have all those funds. Mr. Shane did a great job explaining the value of those. And the economic downturn fund is a great fund to use, but using sort of some really simple math and just use some sales tax money. Let's say we expect to get $26 million in sales tax this year. And we get word from our economists that we're actually going to get 25. So you can make the justification. Yeah, let's use $1 million of the general fund reserve to fill that gap of that economic downturn. The problem is that if we use it for ongoing costs, we're going to experience those same ongoing costs moving into year 2 and year 3, and it exponentially gets bigger. So if we're convinced that we're going to bounce back and get that full $1 million back in the next year, the next 2 years, plus the additional growth that we need just to keep up with the Joneses, then it's a great use of money. But if we're not convinced, then we have to start going, does the structure need to change? And I don't think it's one or the other. It can be a little bit of a combination of both. We did that last year. We relied on the general fund reserve to balance the budget, but we also had some structural changes with city staff with some layoffs. So there's an appropriate balance of those, and I think the use of those funds are strategic and need to be thought through carefully. Let me just end with one other idea: is being strategic about how we use those monies. Right now, we're facing a significant number of claims relating to streets and to sidewalks. Those monies directly hit the general fund, not the general fund reserve, but the general fund. As we recall, we just transferred $1.6 million from the general fund reserve to help pay for these lawsuits. Strategically, there may be value rather than paying out claims over the next 5 years of 2 million to take $2 million out of your reserves and put it into sidewalk repair, right? And so we're analyzing some of that, but whenever we're going to rely or whenever we're going to recommend using the reserves um, in that kind of scenario, our goal is we'll have an ROI, a return on that investment. So it makes financial sense, not just to spend money here and there. So with that, we're hoping that this helped answer questions. I think the council, because we talk about this regularly, understands these principles. I do worry, especially as we're in labor negotiations, that sometimes our employees don't understand that, and they hear us, as Mr. Shane said, maybe we do ourselves a disservice about beating on our chest that we have $66 million in the bank. We really don't. I mean, we do, but if we were to rely on the general fund reserve to meet the expectations of some of our labor groups, we would deplete any money that we have in 2 years or less. So I think that's where we have to be careful as we talk about these funds. So with that, staff is here to answer any questions that you might have.
Thanks, Graham. Appreciate that. Before we do that, speaker cards on the side. Questions? Right.
Hello? Okay, I'll just talk. Question, Mr. Shane. On the fleet replacement fund, in order to keep costs down, can we like use some of that money to maintenance, to keep our fleets going, keep our vehicles going just a little bit longer, just like we would do at home? You just kind of, instead of buying a new car, pay the money to have it fixed.
Yes, we don't use the fleet replacement fund as the funding mechanism for that activity. We do actually have another internal service fund, a vehicle maintenance fund, and it is charged to its user departments annually. And that fund pays for a number of very talented mechanics that on a regular basis do everything they can to keep those vehicles on the road for as long as they can. So we don't replace vehicles just because they hit the magic mile number or anything like that. The mechanics are regularly keeping assessed of the status of those vehicles, the quality of those vehicles, and no matter what our policy says about replacement at mileage, if we've got more life in those vehicles, we use it.
Ms. Mitchell, can I add on to that? And that's a great question. We actually do an analysis for every vehicle because there's a certain point it doesn't make sense to have it. The vehicle will cost us more. There's a county outside of California. They actually buy new police vehicles every year. So they pretty much do oil changes and one tire change. They don't do any maintenance, and it ends up being cheaper, but it costs a lot of money to get to that point, right? So, but we look at that every single year as we analyze our cars. Can we make this go longer, or if we hold on to this car one more year, are we going to be throwing good money at a bad vehicle?
Sure. I mean, and that's a decision that residents make all the time. I recently did it this past summer. Question on capital improvement programs. If we receive grants, like if we applied for a grant and we receive the grant, does that money get put into that fund? Like we won a grant for a capital improvement project, does that money get put into that fund?
Technically, no, it doesn't. But you bring up a very interesting point. That is not the only fund that supports capital activity in the city. The wastewater fund is a huge contributor and player in that arena. A very large number of projects and dollars committed to capital expenditure are wastewater related projects. Additionally, there is a ton of funding sources available for transportation related projects Transnet, RMRA, things like that. So there are separate buckets of money for those kind of things. The fund that I was discussing, the city CIP fund, generally are for things like roofs, air conditioners on City Hall, things like that. We do get a lot of capital grant activity. They're usually for very specific things, and they are treated individually also.
Okay, and just one last comment. I like the idea of, well, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Phil?
Thank you, Mr. Shane. For the wastewater fund, can you help me understand? It sounded like the wastewater fund is used to replace and repair infrastructure, and then also mitigate the rate increases.
Um, that fund, the wastewater enterprise fund, encompasses all activity related to wastewater and stormwater operations. My comments were speaking to that residual money, that fund balance that has accumulated, the reserves in that fund. The vast majority of the $44.3 million is for future capital activity. We don't know precisely how much that is, but it's most. Any money that is not tied to capital expenditure will serve two purposes in that fund. One is to provide the working capital so that that fund has the cash it needs to pay its bills. It also will provide the safety net. So for anything bad that happens unforeseen, there's reserves there for that. But the other thing it does, by having that to lean on, if something changes in the wastewater system to where the city has to take action quicker than it can amend current rates, it will lean on that reserve balance to do that. And that's what I mean by rate stabilization in that case.
And your analysis based on the 44.3 million for future capital, is that analysis based off of we have a lot of aging infrastructure? Is that, I mean, like what it would cost to replace what we actually need is like triple what we actually have in money?
I can't answer that one, and I probably shouldn't answer that, but I will say that it is a very aging system, and one of the things that the engineering services group that work on wastewater are currently working on is a master plan for the sewer system, and that will begin to address some of the scheduled replacement while also reserving a certain amount of capacity for things that break.
And then the vehicle replacement fund, does that include, does that take into account the electrification that we have to go through? The state mandated? That probably doesn't, does it?
Those balances are not inflated or deflated because of any requirements like that. No, it's money that is generally and kind of generically set aside to replace that vehicle when it needs to be replaced. How we replace it is a decision made at that time.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
We don't have to buy electric vehicles to get a waiver or pause on, right? We don't have to buy them.
That's not my understanding. I think there are certain vehicles that we can waive. I'll let Mr. Richards answer that.
Yeah, I'm unaware of any credits that the city has. Mandated started buying 50/50, one electric for one vehicle that's over 8,500 pounds. In 2027, it's 100%. So our options, from my understanding, is that we stop buying vehicles or we buy electric when we're replacing vehicles that are over 8,500 pounds. Police and fire are exempt. Emergency response vehicles. If it's not an emergency response vehicle, yeah.
And as you call, we actually tried to get a local legislature to take that up and refer as public works vehicles as emergency vehicles, but they did not.
When we're talking about our budget, and you mentioned borrowing and quantity
We don't. But that does bring up an interesting point that I didn't touch on. That operating reserve, the foundational reserve, the red light reserve, that is to provide working capital. A lot of cities that don't have that reserve established have to borrow money every single year to maintain their operations until the revenues catch up with their spending. This is a process called TANs or trans tax anticipation notes or tax and revenue anticipation notes. And it's an extremely expensive process because you're starting fresh every single year, and it's not technically a variable rate, but you're resetting that on an annual basis. So to be honest with you, it's been so long that I've been involved in that process, I really don't have any idea. Yeah. I would hate to guess.
On the capital the wastewater is restricted to cannot use a place right? That is correct. You can't loan that money to another fund. You can't borrow. That is a question that I actually have fielded in my career, and the attorneys that were involved with it at the time said definitively no, you could not do inter-fund loans from a restricted funding source. Cities own infrastructure, clay pipes, which we had found out many years ago, $3 million project. That's the maintenance replacement plan, 1960 pipes on the pipes get to $3 million. City sewer system is part of our infrastructure that the city maintains, yes.
Part of that wastewater is what we have to
Yes.
Metro has paid.
That is correct.
That is correct. Next year we'll go AWP and this fund will be AWP for projects.
I am not involved with that project, so I'm not familiar with what the timeline on that, but in principle, at some point when that happens, yes.
We're approving that budget next Thursday. Starting not the next year. It's just about complete. We're ready to start stamp ready. Now, when we talk about the general budget, I think something like 85% of the budget is the budget. In fact, if I remember right, 77% of our budget is police and fire. So when you add in the other departments, we're close to 85. There's not a lot of other things we can cut except labor if we had labor. So when we're talking about, let's go back to slide 8, slide 9. Thank you for numbering. Let's go one more before that. Okay. So carry it over to 22. Now go to slide 9. So 7.6 is going to come out of that 14.4.
Conceptually, yes.
All forecast. Or we could say 7.6 now to 67.6 million. So we're going to be down from 67 million to 60 million just for this year.
Those are
Based on uses of the general fund.
Those are both true statements, assuming that revenues and expenses are equal or flat.
So you know, look at that slide and say we could use up 1.4 million in 1 year and have the same kind of thing next year. We won't. A lot of that's one time. But that's how short horizon we are. What we have left for our discretion funds outside of economic uncertainty.
I made some opening statements about the Great Recession. Yeah, I lived through that. It was very difficult, and that scenario that you just talked about there, I think, kind of underlines that. If sales tax plummeted right now, we probably couldn't get in front of it to cut budgets fast enough to keep that from happening. If that were to happen, theoretically, that reserve could disappear overnight.
We said operating reserve 7%. Total general fund. We have economic uncertainty, that's also 20%. So the 20% represents 2.5 for economic uncertainty operating reserve is 5 months. When we have a budget
to pay for a budget that 85% sounds volatile. That's why it's so important to keep a little more than just
In the case,
focusing on how much do we keep in reserve. I want to keep people employed, not to say 2.5 months to lose this money. Sorry, but we got to pay for it. That's not good. It's not good for our staff. So 20% too low, 40% is okay. 5 months. That's typical of a corporate business to have 6 months of reserves to fund operations. We should be closer to that.
there is one other element to that too. Those doomsday events don't come along very often, fortunately. But should we have such a catastrophic event as we did during the Great Recession, and we had to reduce the city's workforce that significantly, that is not a quick process, and it takes time too. So, you know, could we keep the lights on with 2 months worth of reserves if all revenue just ceased coming in? Yeah, that's probably all that's going to get you, and it's probably not going to last long enough for that reduction in force process.
Three-quarters of our country emergency response rate, all we had was $20 million. And that's kind of where we're at. And we've just added a member engine into 208. So that's $1.5 to $2 million a year that we have invested in. It's the right thing to do. But now it's putting more pressure on the incoming increased service level. We only have six police cars on patrol at any given time. Yes, there are other units available if that happens, but we have 6 to 8 units on patrol. There's just not enough in emergency response. So we're starting to use up the reserves
And Mr. Goebel, to your point, there are some cities that have city hall staff at a little bit of a, let's say, a fatter level, and so there's some easy cuts there. But we're at such a level right now. There's no way to resolve some budget concerns without hitting public safety, rounding out a station, probably reducing police services. So there's no way to accomplish those personnel cuts without touching public safety.
What was smart COVID year, when we got $33 million in COVID funds, we didn't just add, as you knew, that was kind of a big city to our west is facing this big deficit because they added a bunch of staff for COVID money. Now they're out of that money. How do they pay for that staff? We were very smart. Not to add staff to programs with one-time money. And I think you're as best as you're doing great as far as managing those. So that's all I got.
Yeah, I think it's just really important that we don't use one-time money for ongoing expenses. That's a big deal. And because you're right, it's pretty soon that bucket's going to be empty, and then we're in really big trouble. So, and I think it's important that the labor organizations understand that. That's just not hiding money. It's there for a reason, so that we don't have to have mass layoffs or a mass reduction of public service. But I agree with my colleagues. We're all pretty fiscally conservative, and I think that's the way to go.
Thank you, Clay.
Oh, yes. Sorry, thank you. The fund for economic uncertainty, what are the thresholds or triggers that we would need to see in the economy to begin drawing from that fund?
I would say that is entirely a policy decision based on the city council's value of where you are and your tolerance to that kind of risk. In that sort of situation, I'm sure the city manager will advise you of what his opinion is, but to access that money, that would be a decision of the city council.
Sure. For example, when we're trying to balance the budget right now, we probably cannot accomplish that given some of the recent sales tax news. We do have a meeting tomorrow with our sales tax consultant. That might be an area that we'll ask the council to consider from a policy discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Clay, thank you. Appreciate that. I guess we need a motion to accept the
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
The last administrative report, item 12, is to consider the adoption of a resolution of intention to amend the CalPERS contract and the introduction of first reading of ordinance amending the CalPERS contract. Deputy Secretary Russell Thorne will tell us.
Additional PERS costs. So essentially, they offered to pick up 1% last year, which we came to council then, and another 1% this year to pay the employer contribution of PERS. So this item before you is to start that process once again. We did get, this is CalPERS who leads the process, so we did get their items a little bit later than published. So you have two additional items in front of you, which are part of the resolution. But I'm here before you to request that you adopt the resolution, you introduce the ordinance, and then you direct the city clerk to read the ordinance, and then to place the next item on the June 9th meeting to finish the contract amendment in order for the POA management group and the executive police position to pay an additional 1% for employer contribution. I'm here to answer any questions, but that concludes my report.
Any questions for Marisol? Okay, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Any street cards inside? No street cards. All right, then, is there any further discussion or someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution approving the intention to amend the contract between the City of El Cajon and the Board of Administration for California Public Employees as outlined in item 1. I'd also make a motion to introduce the ordinance to amend the contract between the city and CalPERS.
We'll go ahead and do the resolution and the ordinance separate.
Okay. I'll retract that second motion and just stick with the first.
Second.
Motion on the table, please signify by raising your hand, saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
I'd like to make a motion to introduce the ordinance as outlined in item 2, the staff report between the city and CalPERS.
Second. Raise your hand in favor, raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
And Mayor, just for the record, the last minute agenda information, which includes the amendment to the CalPERS contract, will be attached as an exhibit to the ordinance that the council is voting to introduce.
Motion carries by unanimous vote, and the title to the ordinance reads, An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of El Cajon approving an amendment to the contract between the City of El Cajon and the Board of Administration, California Public Employees Retirement Systems.
I'll make one more motion to direct the second reading and adoption of the ordinance to be placed on the June 9th, 2026 City Council agenda meeting.
Second.
Raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
Item 13 is my activity report, and I think it is that before you. And then we're at activity reports of Councilmember Vogel.
As reported with a couple of extras, the advanced water purification project, as I mentioned, is getting ready to go online early next year. And so that project is just about done. I'm glad that we beat the city of San Diego's pure water. That was a point of pride, and actually it was a point of negotiation in terms of some of the costs. As far as MTS, there is talk tomorrow about how to handle people who don't pay the fares on the trolley, and there is discussion on a civil procedure versus a criminal procedure, and that is on the agenda for Thursday. Two things.
How much money is involved in that?
On the fare evasion,
Yeah.
about $7 million a year.
All right, Councilmember Kendrick.
As reported.
Councilmember and Deputy Mayor Mitchell.
As reported.
Councilmember Ortiz.
As reported.
There are no joint councilmember reports, no general information items, no first reading of ordinances, no closed session items on today's agenda. This brings us to adjournment, the regular joint meeting of the El Cajon City Council, El Cajon Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency, held this 12th day of May, 2026, is adjourned until Tuesday, May 26, 2026, at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you all very much.
Cast iron.